Hey guys, I'm Ishaan. Welcome to AGInow podcast. I have with me Abhijeet, who has been part of the Super AGI team from the early days. Hey Abhijeet.
Hey Ishaan.
So Abhijeet, I think would love to get a quick intro about yourself. Where all have you been working before joining Super AGI?
Yeah, so I'm a software developer. So earlier I worked with Goldman Sachs. There also I was the part of their core engineering team. Have built a full stack application there and which had quite a good impact. Though it was an internal application making the work of their engineers easy there. After that I got a chance to work with another startup named Nurture Farm. There also they had an internal framework in which I've tried improving their current framework and making it more robust. So these were some of the things.
Awesome. So, Abhijit, you have been part of the core Super AGI team from the very first days. So, talk a bit about like how did you go about setting up the system? How did you go about defining or basically selecting the right tooling to start building Super AGI?
Yeah, I mean, being from the start of a project is actually a good opportunity at my point of view also, and it's quite a responsible task also because you need to take some decision which will decide a lot of things in the upcoming future. So major things, I was very closely working with one of the core team member Mukunda, and we had taken many decisions ki which database should be used, under that which ORM should be used, and why a particular ORM. Like we are using some SQL Alchemy as the ORM. Then there was a lot of discussions and decisions, and then we took a decision ki why such an ORM was chosen for. And database also, we had a discussion ki which type of database will be, because we are not very sure ki how the things will go in future. We were very uncertain, so we don't know how the things will structure up. So we kept the whole model and the schema a little flexible such that it can extend to any possibilities coming in future. So that setting up required a lot of iteration and discussions, but we came up with some solution there.
Sure. So, like, while selecting, let's say, some of these underlying technologies, whether it's the database, the ORM, or what should be the initial architecture. So, what is the framework that you use to define, hey, these are the pros and these are the cons? So, how do you think about, let's say, selecting the right technology? And of course, you won't have 100% of the information, but basis whatever information you have in the present, how do you select, let's say, a Postgres versus a MongoDB, or maybe let's say using SQL Alchemy or versus some other ORM? So how do you kind of go about selecting these tools, and what is the framework that you use essentially?
Yeah, ways to take the decision on database is actually normal, which people generally follow. Like if the data is structured, we go with a structured type of a database, or if the data is unstructured, we'll go with something like Mongo. This is something, a general guideline which is used, but we were not very sure what to go with. And second point which we kept in mind is it was an open source project, and we wanted people to accept and contribute and help us out on the way. So it shouldn't be something very peculiar which people don't know and they're not familiar with. So that point was to be also
So
taken, which
popularity is,
is
you
one of
were
the
saying, one of the
concern.
key factor.
Yeah, popularity, and it goes well from the tech point of view as well. It
Got it.
shouldn't create a burden later.
So there should be an overlap between what is being used by the community so that they have certain level of familiarity with
Hmm.
the particular tool or
Yeah.
technology, and at the same time, it should be aligned with the overall evolution of the
How?
architecture that you have planned
Exactly.
for the project.
Exactly.
Got it. Very interesting. So tell me, how much time did it take from start, from writing the first line of code to getting the initial skeleton of the architecture in place?
I think it was almost a week, and everyone was there in their full force. And I remember an incident probably in the morning. One of my core member Mukunda only messaged me about 5:21 in the morning saying, "Are you there?" The same 5:21 minute I also replied, "Yes, I'm there." So that was the mutual work going on. He knew that there is a
Mhm.
responsibility to get things up.
Yeah,
Took
that's
almost a
amazing.
week.
I think like one of the things that people talk about you is that you're just somehow available 24/7, and you are like there holding the fort when it comes to, let's say, responding to the all the requests which are coming from the community, or whether it is about taking certain initiative to build out certain critical part or component. So I think that level of work ethics, I would say, is commendable.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's actually, I also want to keep it up, and that's how I like myself also,
Yeah.
being active and full of energy always.
So what do you think drives, or what do you think is the source of this level of curiosity and this level of energy that you bring on the floor?
Talking about the source, even I'm not very sure. It's how I've been brought up, and the thing is,
Because you're always smiling. Yeah, whenever somebody,
yeah,
let's say, is working with you in the team, you always have this infectious energy going about you.
yeah. I mean, it's like I don't want anyone to be sad, obviously, around me. I'm working for some purpose, and I want that
Yeah.
should be conveyed to everyone around.
Right.
Otherwise, I won't be there.
Sure. So I think like that purpose is what I'm hearing is what really like drives
Yeah,
you.
the purpose
Got
point
it.
of is a main thing.
No, amazing. And I think moving a bit towards the other components. So tools, I think once we had the initial architecture and the base, I would say the initial core foundation setup, the next thing that we have started working on was tools. And tools, I think the best way to think about it would be they are like the hands of the agent. If agent LLMs are the mind of the agent and agent workflows are how an agent really uses his mind to do certain tasks, then tools are what give dexterity to execute some real life work.
Yeah.
So talk a bit about that. How did that initial notion of what tools are and how they will be built that evolved? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a evolution from when the first tool was built out. It
Yeah.
was extremely hard coded. There was no generalization there, but now taking to a space or a state where anybody from the community essentially can build out a tool. So
Yeah.
talk a bit about that. How did that evolution went about? And also if for the audience you can talk about what exactly a tool is.
Yeah. So very well said. Yeah. I mean, I also see tool as an point of action for our application. I mean, you had chat gpt, you had similar gpt applications. They only tell you what to do, they don't do it for you. So our main point was to get something done for you. So that's how tool is a major thing in a whole super agi. It enables super agi to do things, and getting tools and the whole architecture in place was actually a challenge, and still we are developing and making it more flexible and robust. So yeah, initially we had simple tools, like something very simple sort of tool, like just sending a sms or just sending a mail, a very simple type of tool, mostly very hard coded, not actually the way anyone can build it, not a proper shape of how a framework should look. But a very highly coupled type of tool which we had, but we iterated over it. And with the introduction of more tools, the society in place also giving their ideas and taking their ideas also, we re-architected the whole thing, brought tools into picture, brought toolkit into place. Community played a great role because they demanded ki, okay, there should be something called toolkit. And then we also thought ki toolkit should not be just a toolkit for namesake, not just a group, but a
But
toolkit from
what
architecture
what
level.
what exactly is a toolkit versus a tool?
So tool, as you say, is just an action. Toolkit probably could be a group of action. So not like a group of action actually, but it's like, suppose you have different weapons. So each weapon could be a tool, and a whole weapon set could be a toolkit. So when you give a toolkit, it has a responsibility defined, and all the responsibility comes under when you see toolkit as a like whole. It's a whole type of system. So like it's not just one particular thing it's doing, rather in a very synchronous manner with multiple tools for a single responsibility. That's how I see a toolkit.
Got it. Got it. So is it fair to assume that a tool would be equivalent of an API endpoint and a toolkit would be an equivalent of, let's say, a collection of APIs?
It's not always API, I would say. I mean,
But just
different.
from an analogy standpoint,
Yeah, I
would
mean,
that be a fair analogy?
analogy is actually correct, but technically saying not all tools are an API.
Got
Yeah.
it, got it. And tell me, like, more about, let's say, how did you enable, let's say, community to build out the tools? Because I think that's a key part of getting the flywheel in place, right? How do you make it so easy and frictionless for people to understand how to build out a tool and then essentially like ship it out, get some approval, publish it on the marketplace or for their internal use cases? So what does that workflow look like now versus what it was earlier?
Yeah. So initially we just have something called the internal tools, or just the tools, which was highly coupled to the current super AGI architecture, and only you need the whole super AGI in place, and then you can add a tool and make it work in a very integrated manner. We didn't have a full external tool concept, or where the tool itself you can make and then you can integrate as an independent unit to it. So inception of that idea made it more better for the whole community to accept, because until the tool was very much coupled to the application, it was hard for people to understand the whole code base and then probably raise a PR and then merge a tool. Now having a tool as a separate entity and then providing them a way to merge it is actually a different experience for the whole community.
Correct. But can you maybe go one level deeper technically and walk us through what does the specific process look like? Let's say if I'm a developer, I need to build out tool for one of the app. Let's say it can be any CRM such as Close.io or Salesforce. How would I go about doing it?
Yeah. So talking from very fundamental level, how a tool works. So there are few code or classes, I would say, which you should inherit and you should make the whole tool. That classes we are providing, we package them as a pip package, and it's there in the Python repository.
What is the name of the script package?
So you can do pip install SuperAGI tools and get the package in place,
Okay.
and then you can use the base tool class and the base toolkit class or the base configuration class to make your own tool and toolkit over it. So this was like the base thing. We abstracted out that part, put it as a Python package for anyone to use, and you just need to do a pip install as you do any other package in your app, and it will be ready to be integrable for the SuperAGI framework. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And how do you handle authentication in these tools? Because that's also a critical part of, let's say, when somebody is building out a tool, let's say if I'm integrating my Google Calendar, how do you handle the authentication piece? And what were the nuances and the complications that you solved?
Yeah, I mean, this was actually a good point. We had a very recent discussion on this, and we're still evolving. As I said, we are not very mature. We are into development. We are still iterating. We are still thinking, and we're still making it better. So, talking about auth, especially, we actually, while making some tools like, yeah, as you mentioned, Google Calendar tool required an authentication, even Twitter tool required an authentication. We had that authentication flow set up for our internal use cases, but we are soon also enabling them for the external tool that's into development. But as an internal tool, that auth is in place. You can check out the current tools, how the auth works, and a simple PR could help you get started with the same.
Sure, sure. No, I think because this is very critical given that, let's say, I think if you think about all the platforms which have grown and matured, the ease of building applications has played a very pivotal role to
Yeah,
enable that.
that's true.
And you look at, let's say, the Android ecosystem, you look at the iOS ecosystem, or even, let's say, in the B2B cases, Salesforce App Store or HubSpot App Store. The experience for a developer to seamlessly build an application is a critical component there.
Correct. Yeah. Once you set up the whole ecosystem, it should be flexible and easy to use. Then only people will come and use it. I mean, you need to make that ecosystem. You should enable them to easily go through that. That friction should be very less. I mean, you should be
Got it.
easily able to do. That
Yeah.
was our aim also, while
Right.
enabling external tools and making this whole flow.
Got it. Got it. And tell me, how did that evolve into a marketplace of tools? So now we have a marketplace of agent templates, tools, and soon we are adding embeddings, knowledge, and models there as well. But talk a bit about the marketplace of tools. How does that work out, and what is the architecture that we essentially follow there?
Yeah. So the thing was, we had tools, we had people contributing as external tool, but there should be a proper management system where people who wants their tool to be shown to the whole world, and there should be a verification also, because we don't know what people are making. It's infinite actually. So there had set up a way how you can make a tool, you can raise a request to one of our repositories, which we say as a marketplace actually. And once you raise a request to the marketplace, we verify the tool actually on one by one basis, and then once that is there in the marketplace repository, it is verified by us and it will be shown to everyone. So it's like a tool which we verified but made by you, available for everyone.
Got it. Now talking a bit about resource manager. Resource manager is a critical component for agents, and because agents don't operate in silos, they need to have some context about your data to basically solve some personalized use cases. In that context, maybe can you talk a bit about how did we go about building out the resource manager and what all changes were you involved in?
Yeah. So what I see after tools, the most critical part is, I guess, the resource manager itself, because as I said, you have the tools to take actions, but you also need some resources which are probably fed by the user the way user wants. So that what the resources are. So after making tools, like initially we integrated tools like the Google search tool, the email sending tool, and the very basic ones. But those tools worked very independent without any resources or any some prerequisite in place. So in that context, we added something called resource manager, where you can upload something. You have a book, you can upload the book, then you can ask questions on it. So that's how resource manager, the idea came out, and then we started supporting and evolving over the resource manager, initially starting with just the txt formats. Now probably the resource manager takes your images, your just text your pdfs also. Probably you can give your code also, it can iterate over the code also. So this is how it has evolved. And then further we wanted more ease in the architecture key. The resources are, initially we had a discussion, we'll keep resources whether in the agent level or it should be like the execution, but we think agent has a responsibility, it has a resource, so we have kept it in the agent level. But there are other things like these agents output resources, but then there should be a proper segregation of the resources in when you view it, which execution you got a proper resources and output. So taking all these points, we reiterated over the resources and made it available, all the output on the run level, especially with the inclusion of the supercoder in place. This became a very important thing to be done.
Got it. And I think one of the key things in these open source projects is that there's going to be a large community who'll be creating PRs, who'll be contributing code. So how do you ensure quality? And I think we have done a decent job recently in setting up the unit test in place and also adding controller level unit test. And we were able to do that fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a bit about that? How do we handle quality for such a decentralized distributed
Yeah, I
project?
mean, quality is actually a great thing to be taken in place because you're contributing open source. You want more people to come. If people don't understand the code, they won't contribute. And to make people understand the code should be readable. And to make the code readable and working, you need unit test documentation, code documentation, and everything in place. So this becomes a major thing because not just because this application is running in a cloud environment or anything to just ensure the robustness there, but as an open source community taking it up and providing some their feedback and their work into it, we need a good quality code. So obviously we started with unit test, and initially when we started we didn't have any test because we had some features and some ideas in the mind which we wanted to code first, and we started with this. And in that line the unit test where we didn't go initially, but later once we got to a stage where people started understanding what we started pulling up our code quality. We started documenting the whole code in and out. It's documented now. Started bringing unit test in all the levels, either controllers, model, with all the classes and all the helper files, such that whole code is tested and anyone can understand the code. It should be so readable and they can contribute in the same way, such that it is open for the community, anyone to come in and contribute.
Amazing. Awesome, Abhijeet. It was great to have you on the show
Yeah.
and look forward to talk to you about more such sort of contribution that you make to the project.
Yeah, it was nice, Ishaan, talking to you as well.
Thanks a lot.